Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I am just one reader coming to you with another batch of book reviews. I will be discussing the last 4 books that I have read so far in 2021. It took me a while to read these books just because they are a little lengthy, but I will say this is probably my most successful batch of reading that I've had in recent months. I will be sharing 4 books with you today, and from those 4 books, 3 of them got 5 stars, and one got almost 5 stars. So this is a really successful, incredible batch of reading from me to you. I'm sharing it with you. So let's just get started. So book number 11 that I read this year was David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. This book is the one that I almost gave 5 stars to. It's a weird book for me because I look at it, I think about it, and I want to give it 5 stars. I have grown incredibly attached to this novel and to this author and to these characters. And I keep on finding in myself that the more I let it simmer, the more I grow attached to it. Have you ever had that kind of an experience before? Yeah, I just looking at the opening paragraph, he says, whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike and I began to cry simultaneously. So just looking at, by the way, that was my weird Downton Abbey-esque fake British accent. I read the entire book with that accent in my head. But anyway, Charles Dickens's David Copperfield is a novel that I almost gave 5 stars to. Essentially what this is, if you haven't read it or if you have no idea what this is, let me tell you briefly. It's the story of David Copperfield, a boy. We mainly see him as a boy in the novel. I think the best parts of the book, the first half of the book, is when he's a child. We follow him in his childhood. He has some family drama that actually gets him to study at another like boarding school, and then he meets some characters there, and then he works in London as a child, and he meets some other characters there. Then he grows up and he comes to London now as an adult man, and he meets more characters, and he reunites with some of the other characters from the first section of the novel, and we just follow a series of adventures and encounters with very colorful, quaint, quirky characters, and that's really my takeaway from David Copperfield. I loved the characters, the way that they are very colorful, and they feel unreal, but they feel three-dimensional. They feel fully fleshed, and yet they don't feel like caricatures, but they feel otherworldly, and there's just something completely otherworldly and charming and delightful about this book. It's a little bit like watching Gilmore Girls, my favorite TV show, because you can see that this world could actually maybe potentially exist, but it just feels a little too uncanny, a little too far-fetched, and that's why I love Gilmore Girls, because you know that could never really happen, but you wish it could, and it would only take a little few changes to reality for it to happen. That's the way that I felt about David Copperfield. My only problems with this book were that towards the ending of the book, and by the way, this is a long book, it's almost 1,000 pages, and it reads like a very long, lengthy, chunky, substantial novel. By the end of it, I was sort of ready for it to be over. I found it a little bit boring and sagging, if that's an adjective, towards the ending, and I wish it would have taken a different turn. I also think that the first half of the book is really different and really brave and really fresh, and then the ending of the novel, the actual resolution of David Copperfield, felt a little bit standard and a little bit safe. Like he was playing it safe. So I was a little bit disillusioned and disappointed by the actual ending of the book, but still, you gotta love this book for the gorgeous Dickensian writing and characters, and this is a hilarious book. I kept laughing and laughing and laughing. So if you are sort of thinking about reading Charles Dickens for the first time, I would recommend picking David Copperfield up. It was a good entry point for me, and I gave this 4.5 stars. Also, I will mention, it took me over 8 months to read this book, and that's completely my fault. It's not because the book was boring or dragging necessarily. I just really wanted to take the time to savor everything properly, and it took me 8 or longer months to do it. I would advise you, if you are considering picking this book up, to not do that, just because you sort of you lose the rhythm of the reading experience, if you get my drift. So just read it at a quicker pace, and I think you will be enchanted. The next book that I read was Stephen Sondheim, Alive by Mariel Seacrest. I have made a separate book review for this, so I will only say here that this book is a pretty comprehensive and in-depth biography on Stephen Sondheim, my musical idol. He was the creator of some master works of musical theater, the American musical theater, Sweeney Todd, Follies, Company, Into the Woods, Sunday in the Park with George, Sunday in the Park with George, and many more. He's one of those people that I look up to in admiration and in awe, and he has a very interesting childhood. He had a very interesting childhood. He's a very interesting individual, and this biography, although it didn't quite give me information that I didn't have previously, I really enjoyed it, and I really loved the gossip. Getting to hear from other people around the Sondheim family and hearing their thoughts on little Stephen Sondheim growing up. And I really loved this book, even though it didn't give me anything particularly new to me, because I have already read a lot about his life. I thought this was great, and I gave it 5 stars. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. Sunday in the Park with George. Then I read my favorite book of the year, but actually, the next 2 books that I will mention here are sort of tied, very much, like, really tied for my favorite book of the year. I cannot decide which one I love more. Yeah, it's just a very close competition. But anyway, first I read A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. This was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and it's a book that I had on my bookshelves for quite some time, and I just hadn't picked it up. I don't know why, but then someday, when we are wiser, when the world's older, when we have learned someday. Anyway, this is what happens when you drink too many cups of coffee in the morning before going to IKEA. You're just like, yeah, full of excitement. It's like that character from Saturday Night Live. the Kristen Wiig lady, her character. I'm so freaking excited. That's the way I feel right now. Anyway, I feel very excited talking about this book and the next one. A Confederacy of Dunces is a book that I was not expecting to love the way that I did. I knew it could potentially be a really good book for me because it's supposed to be a comedic masterpiece. But when I actually picked it up, I was completely blown out of my mind. This is just something else. Never in my life have I laughed out loud reading a book the way that I did with A Confederacy of Dunces. This book is the definition of just uproarious, laughter-inducing literature. And it's also very profound if you bother to really consider and ponder what you're reading. We follow this character, Ignatius J. Riley. I think of him as a combination of Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye and something like a Philip Seymour Hoffman kind of character, very sort of surly and mean and arrogant and sort of disgusting, but there's so much depth in this character. I think he's a truly tragic character, in more ways than just one. This book is delightful, and I think it's a perfect book. Well, not exactly perfect. I do think that towards the ending of the novel, there's a little bit too much fat. Talking about Ignatius, who is incredibly fat, that's one of his main characteristics. The book has a little bit of extra fat towards the end that I personally would have preferred it to be leaner in terms of the story. I think it could have been maybe 50 or even 100 pages shorter, but still 5 stars, absolutely 5 stars. This was incredible, and I need everybody to read that book. And now, finally, Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I'm just gonna say it right away. I think this might be my favorite book of the year so far, but again, it's a very close tie with A Confederacy of Dunces. These books are perfect, but they are incredibly different, and they both elicited. I love that word. It's like a very teacher-y kind of word. Elicit. I remember when I was a teacher, I used to use that word very frequently in my lesson planning. Like, we will elicit blah 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 blah. But anyway, this book elicited so many wonderful emotions in me, and it's a book that had me completely gripped, and I gave it 5 stars immediately. Like, there's no considering that. It's a 5-star book for sure. So this one is the first book in the Life Ship Traders trilogy, which is the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, which is this huge series composed of different series. And I actually had previously tried to read this book before, like 3 or 4 years ago, but my mistake was reading the Spanish translation, which was horrible. I realize it now. That was a huge mistake, because Robin Hobb's real writing style in English is absolutely the main reason why these books are so freaking good. The prose, the writing style, the storytelling. Oh, yeah, yes, Robin Hobb, please, I need more. But really, everything in this book shines completely. I mean, totally, dazzlingly. What am I even saying? Too much coffee. So freaking excited. This book has a plethora of wonderful characters, all of whom are absolutely challenging to the reader, because, if I had to just say one word that summarizes what Robin Hobb does or did to me with this book, it would be perspective. Perspective. She plays with perspective. Of course, she changes point of view. There, we follow different characters' points of view, but it's a matter of perspective, because in the first sections of the book, we see characters that we absolutely despise with every fiber of our being, and then we get to see them from another perspective. Word of the day, perspective. And they become not different characters, but you can see them through another lens, and you suddenly start questioning your own perspective of them. So that happens with all of the characters in this book. There's not one character that you think just one way about. It's like looking at each singular character from many different points of view, and it's so enriching, and it really creates some of the best characters that I've read in recent years. That's how freaking excited I am about this book. This tells the story of the Vestrit family, who own a life ship. A life ship is basically a magical ship that has magical properties and can talk and has a conscience. But in order to have a life ship, you have to pay a ridiculous amount of money and get the life ship, and then you need 3 members of your family to die on the deck of the ship so that the ship can quicken or awaken. The magic system is so lovely and complex and wonderful. The characters, the storylines, it's just the right combination of a story that has enough adventure, enough action, enough plot, but it's also it's mostly character driven, so you really become invested in everything that's going on. And because of the nature of the changing from one character's point of view to another, the story really, really flows and it just runs beautifully. I read the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, and it's nothing like this. I mean, the Farseer trilogy is a good trilogy, but it's a trilogy that has many problems. There's not a problem, not a single problem with this book. If this is an example of what Robin Hobb is doing from now on, I am reading everything by her. This book is perfect, and it's 5 stars. It's the best fantasy book that I have read since The Name of the Wind. It might be better than The Name of the Wind. Objectively, it is better than The Name of the Wind. I just really loved The Name of the Wind when I read it when I was younger, which was a good 10 years ago. But in all honesty, Ship of Magic is something else, and I am incredibly excited to read the next books in the Life Ship Traders and in the rest of the series, the Realm of the Elderlings. So those are the 4 books that I wanted to share with you. Leave a comment down below, share your thoughts with me, and I will see you on the next video. This video was a mess.